What's going on, everybody? It's me, Jason, with buybuildsell, your Los Angeles contractor and developer, and this is at Fiske. Now, today we're not talking about the house, we're actually talking about the landscaping. We're gonna talk to you about the LID planters. Now, LID stands for Low Impact Development. Let's write that across the screen so you can write that down and remember that for another episode, okay? What does that stand for? What does that mean? Low Impact Development. Well, essentially what the city's trying to do is trying to lower the impact that developments give to the environment, okay? Basically, we want to make sure that the amount of water that hits this property is getting used on this property the same that it would have before we built the house, before we added concrete to it, before we added trees to the space. What we have to do during the planning stages, the engineering stage, and all those stages before we actually start building the house is you have to do the math to make sure that all of the water that hits the roof of this house ends up getting used on this property. Now, there's sheet flow, there's a whole bunch of spaces that might not get to the LID planter itself, but overall, throughout the house, well, this is what we have here. All throughout the house, we have gutters. Throughout the gutters, we have downspouts. Those downspouts get caught into drains right there at the bottom. And all of those drains lead to one place, right to here in this planter. Now, there might be spots where, say, well, Jason, what if it lands right here and it doesn't actually hit the drain that we have here, which then leads to the planter? Well, that's good. That means that the soil that it's landing in is actually going to use that water, absorb that water, use that water for its good of the property. What happens here is that all the water that doesn't get used on the property, all of that sheet flow water, essentially ends up getting caught in those drains, comes out into this planter, this big void in the ground. And a lot of people, really don't like them because they're not curb friendly. They're kind of ugly when you see them up close, kind of like me in high school, right? But basically all that water lands here, and what it does is it's actually almost 3 feet deep. It's 27 inches deep. That allows for percolation and that water to actually bury all the way down and find another channel, another drain at the bottom of that that's leading to a pump. And from that pump, only that extra water, only that last drip, essentially that last drop, is gonna go into that pump and then be pumped out into the street. So the city really wants to actually literally reduce the amount of water that's going into the street, and we're literally taking it section by section and reducing it down and down and down until it finally gets to the street. Now, another space that doesn't always necessarily work with that is like a driveway, a big pad of concrete, or a section that's not necessarily near this, right? So with these sections, we're actually required to make sure that we have these spaces in between the concrete. We're not just allowed to pour a massive slab of concrete without making sure that we can grab the water from the concrete and bring it to where it needs to go, or at least let it percolate. So there's actually a requirement to have percolating hardscape that allows permeable hardscape that allows the water to percolate through the concrete, and that's what these gaps are actually for. What the turf that you see here, though it's aesthetically pleasing, it's a design that we do, it's really actually thoroughly thought out to allow for percolation within the hardscape. These gaps are drawn out every 4 inches. Essentially, 10% of the hardscape is permeable, meaning 40 inches, 4-inch gap, 40 inches, 4-inch gap, and so on, allowing this, as that water is flowing down, just a little bit of that water is getting caught in between there and percolating and being used for the soil or anything underneath the ground. So that's what LID is. That's what we did on this project. This is for an in-ground planter. Now, you've seen the planters we did on Marionette. Those are above ground planters. This is called a rain garden. Okay, that's what that's for. And there's also options for barrels, and they do have some other weird barrels that are kind of buried in the ground where the water actually just goes there and doesn't get pumped out. But I think those are for like more remote areas. They're not for local city areas. So I don't know too much about those. But on Radcliffe, you're gonna see the process of doing it through barrels. And the question really is, a lot of people fight with this. The real question is, which one's the one to do? When you're building a house, you have to actually decide, how do I want to deal with the LID? How do I want to deal with the low impact development for this project? And you have to kind of make a decision every single time which one is best fit for the project. Is it worth me building a planter? Is it worth doing a rain garden? Should I just buy barrels and set them up near the gutters? Which one's going to be the best fit? And the truth is, there's no like, this is the one to use every single time. I think that every single project has its own benefits to using one versus the other, and you really have to make those decisions very carefully when you're making them. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. Press that like button. It lets other people like you know they might like this too. And of course, press that bell button. We're uploading 2 videos a week, so there's a lot to see, and your support is my motivation. I'll see you on the next video.